Welcome to Hollers and Hills, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of East Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains. The tourism hub welcomes millions of visitors a year, but it's also home to generations rooted in its Hollers and Hills. Arrowmont is a renowned school of arts and crafts hidden in the heart of Gatlinburg. It first opened in 1912 to educate settlement children in rural Appalachia. Today, the campus hosts artists, students, and faculty from around the world, and is home to an impressive archive of Appalachian art. In this episode, we talk to Arrowmont CEO about the school's storied past, its mission to enrich lives through art, and Arrowmont's prominence within the creative community. Hello and welcome to Hollers and Hills. I'm your host, Beth Haynes, alongside community leader and developer Austin Williams, and we are thrilled to have with us today Trudy Hughes, who is the CEO of Arrowmont School of Arts and Crafts. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Well, I titled you CEO, but you've told me that you are the art appreciator and artist elevator.
That's it. That is correct. That's what I do well. I draw stick figures. I'm not really talented when it comes to artwork, but that's luckily not my job. My job is really to value and appreciate the hundreds and thousands of artists and craftspersons that come through connectivity with Arrowmont and lifting them up, helping our communities across the nation to learn about the great art that's made there and hopefully to enjoy it either by viewing it or taking a piece home if they're so inclined.
And Arrowmont has such a storied history. Before we get into all of that, I want to talk about where Arrowmont is located because so many people listening, watching have probably passed right by Arrowmont and didn't realize its location.
That is true. We do not have parkway frontage any longer. We did for decades, but with some change in land ownership, we're now a half a block off the parkway. So our address is 556 Parkway. So if you come through traffic light number 3 in downtown Gatlinburg, and then when you see the Anarchista sign and you can see the chairlift, and then right below the Anarchista sign is a sign that says Arrowmont. Turn left there and you'll see our gates just on up and to the left. If you don't want to come through traffic light 3 and deal with all the downtown traffic, which we love because that means all our best friends, new and returning, have come back to town to stay with us. You can go up 321 toward Cosby and jump off on Baskins Creek Bypass. And we have an entrance at the top of the hill there as well, which is a little less congested and a little easier way to get into us.
How did Gatlinburg become home to this School of Arts and Crafts?
Well, the school actually predates Gatlinburg. There was no Gatlinburg when we were formed. So back in the early 1900s, the Pi Beta Phi National Fraternity of Women wanted to do a settlement school. Their mission was then and continues to be focused on literacy and health care. And they really wanted to focus on Central Appalachia. So they looked at 3 different sites, one being here in what was then, I believe, White Oak Flats. There was, I believe, a livery stable, a makeshift post office, and a little bit of a general store all in one building. And that really was all that was there at that time. So they actually came in here to Sevierville and then out by Buckboard Wagon and found the area, met with the families who were living there. And then jointly made the decision to start the school. So that was around 1906. All the negotiations got worked out in 1912. The school actually opened. So Gatlinburg kind of grew around the Arrowmont Settlement School.
It really did, especially when you look at the footprint of today. I read that those early years, students would actually bring thank you gifts to their teachers. They were handmade arts and crafts.
Exactly. So if you think about our tradition of families here, one of the things we know about Appalachian families is we're very proud. We don't take handouts. We don't want charity. And so it's very challenging for some families to know their children are getting this wonderful education they would not be getting elsewise. But how were they paying for it? Well, certainly economically they didn't have monies to afford schooling, or they would have sent their children elsewhere to be educated. So they paid with the things that they knew how to make and create. So they paid with furniture, weavings, blankets and coverlets, pottery and bowls, utilitarian things that they made in their own homes and shared amongst one another so that all their homes could be adequately appointed. So it started out, many of them came as gifts to the teachers, great woven baskets and other wood carvings, wood crafted items. But also it was a way, I think, of the families to be able to give back, to support the school. the Pi Phi women quickly saw this as an opportunity and took those items and dispersed them through their alumni chapters across the country, and they were sold there because this was a craft that no one had really valued or appreciated or even seen unless they had spent some time really deliberately traveling into Appalachia. So the items were sold at the alumni chapters. The money came back. Half went to the school to support the school. The other half went back to those families. So Arrowmont, while bringing health care and literacy to many families in our community, the other thing it brought was the first opportunity for outside economic viability to come in. So instead of, we saw in the 20s, 30s, maybe even early 40s, a lot of family members left our community and they went to the big cities, elsewhere where there were factories and places to work. This gave our families an opportunity to stay right here in their home communities, their hometowns, to enjoy the land and the community they loved, but still make a living without having to go work in the factories. They could continue to work in their homes. Over the years, Arrowmont put in a weaving shop and a wood crafting shop, so the families who did not have all the equipment at home could come to Arrowmont, make things there, and then they could be sold across the country. So it was really an economic driver, an economic boost for our community, as well as getting great education and access to health care.
So they built all of those things while it was still a school?
While it was still a school.
Okay.
Yes.
Goodness.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned that there were 3 different communities, that Gatlinburg being one, or White Oak Flats.
Right.
What were the 2 others?
So Tellico Plains was one, and I'm not remembering right now the third one, but again, if you think of Tellico Plains in 1906, Tellico Plains as we know it now wasn't even there. So these were very much an intersection in a path that was often traveled, but more of a wilderness path. If you think about through Gatlinburg, that was a way to get to from Sevierville to Cherokee or to Asheville. Probably was the destination that a lot of people were going for, but it was not a paved or even a graveled highway. It literally was somewhat of a trail coming through here. But they were looking for communities where there was a cluster of families. They felt like it would be a good investment of their time and energy to build a school, but really would give back to young people and families that were not going to have a means otherwise to be educated.
You know, it's interesting, in many of these episodes we've came across a point in time that, like, wow, if that one little decision wouldn't have been made, like, what would have been the ripple effect?
Yeah.
And, you know, think about the arts and crafts community in Gatlinburg and, like, how well known that is. That's a big staple of what Gatlinburg has been about for many years.
Absolutely.
And if Arrowmont's not there at that point in time, what's the ripple effect?
What would have happened to our community if there had not been a way to value the talents and the creativity of so many families in all of these arts and crafts media areas, and then someone to elevate that by saying, you know, shining a light, if you will, almost on our community. If we'd had to wait on folks from away to find us, how long would that have taken? And would the true arts and crafts entrepreneurial spirit, would that have even been lifted up? Or, you know, in so many communities, lots of arts and crafts media were lost through those generations because so many of those families did begin to break apart and family members moved to larger areas where there was better job opportunity.
Yeah, because especially you think of Arrowmont, but near Gatlinburg, Pittman area, there's a whole arts and crafts community,
Exactly.
right? And was that a direct partnership?
I think the two fed one another. I think, you know, the community loved that there was great education and health care for their children. And they saw their children, their families benefiting from that, but also they were being appreciated for their culture and what their culture was creating. So rockers were valued and other types of wooden furniture and basketry and all the great weavings and fabric making, the great pottery that came out. You know, these were items that families had been making for generations just because they had to. You didn't have it if you didn't make it yourself. And suddenly that was being not just elevated, and the economic piece is important, but valued and appreciated. Art appreciation. They were being appreciated in a totally different way perhaps than they had ever been, other than maybe within themselves, that they loved what they were creating and they knew it was of great quality and beauty. But even then they didn't speak about it. I think about my granny, who was talented in so many ways artistically. And after one of my first visits to Arrowmont as a child, I remember running in home through the back screen door and saying, "Granny, you're an artist." And she said, "No, I just make things with my hands. I just keep my hands busy."
You said that was 1960. What took you to Arrowmont?
My family loved to come vacation in Gatlinburg. My dad loved the Brass Lantern restaurant, and my mom loved Old Smoky Candy, the candy kitchen, the stick candy there. And so we would come once or twice a year, stay at one of the hotels, always eat at Daddy's favorite restaurant, always buy candy at Mother's favorite place. And if I was lucky, we came to the Aerocraft shop, which was right there on the corner on the Parkway when Arrowmont owned property all the way down to the corner in the traffic light. And so one of my first opportunities was getting to have my parents buy me a piece there that I loved. And so over the years, I probably have 4 to 6 pieces still from there that my parents were kind enough to gift to me while I was growing up. But it really brought home that foundation for me because, again, I grew up in one of those Appalachian homes where Granny did needlepoint, she did quilting, she made our clothes, she made bedspreads. There was always some project going on in the home, not ever called art, but just I keep my hands busy. It's what I do to stay busy and to keep our family going. And so it helped me to really value my family in a way that I might not have otherwise, or I might not have till a lot later in my life.
And I think it's interesting that Arrowmont even then was bringing exposure to the talent in the mountains long before today. Now you bring in artists in residency. Talk about the transition from educating the school children in the community to strictly focusing on arts and crafts. When did that shift happen?
I think when public education really started to take over and advance out throughout Sevier County, as it did in many rural counties throughout Tennessee, there was not that need for that settlement school because we had county public education that would provide that. But because of the overlay of such a connectiveness between Arrowmont and the families there was already this great body of teachers, if you will, or instructors who were coming there and doing, whether it was weaving on a loom or making other types of hand goods or making pottery, they were doing wood. There was already this great industry, cottage industry, but industry that was going both at Arrowmont as well as supporting people in their homes throughout the community, much as you mentioned, out in the glades as you're going out toward Gatlinburg, Pittman. So I think one of the things that happened is getting a director at Arrowmont who really valued and appreciated those arts and crafts experiences, and that was Marianne Hurd, and she had connectivity with UT Knoxville. She was, I'm gonna say it was probably called the Home Economics Department back then. The name's been changed a lot through the decades, but she became the director of Arrowmont too, and really saw this as an opportunity and to continue the school, to continue to invite people in. When it was still functioning as a public school, they would use the summer breaks as a time for people to come who were not affiliated with the school or not some of the families necessarily affiliated with the school children to come and take classes. And so I think as they begin to think about how Arrowmont could evolve, this was a great spot for them to evolve into, was to take it to the next level of teaching as a way of really ensuring that Appalachian art and craft, that traditional processes would continue going forward.
Boy, it has. Let's talk about the current footprint. Tell us about campus. I think people, they hear art, they think, oh, maybe a studio, but you have housing, you have multiple workshop areas, you do have studios, and you have this wonderful exhibition hall and also an archive.
Yes, there's a lot there to be all kind of contained on 14 acres. So back when the school started, there was much more acreage involved. But again, around 2012, the Pi Beta Phi National Fraternity made the decision to sell a large portion of the land. So we currently reside on approximately 14 acres, which sounds like a lot, and in downtown Gatlinburg, that is quite a lot. But true to our mountainous area, there's lots of hills and valleys on the property as well. So we make good use of every nook and cranny that we can. But we're really fortunate, yes, to have a lot there. We have housing space, so up to 125 students and faculty can be on campus at any time. We have a wonderful dining hall, so we're doing 3 meals a day to make sure that everyone who's visiting is well fed and enjoying that aspect of it. We have 9 studios, and some of those are really dedicated to a particular medium. such as there are 2 studios just in the wood turning shop area just for those. There's 3 studios in the pottery complex to really focus on that media. And then there's some studios that can be multi-purpose and really change depending on what's being taught in that particular area at a given time. We have 3 galleries there that are open now. We have a 4th gallery we'll be adding next year. So folks who truly are like me and they say, I don't know if I can learn how to create something. No, I have learned anyone can learn how to create. You just have to free up that spot in your heart to be creative. So we do beginners through advanced classes, but if that person says, it's not my forte to make something, but I just want to come soak it up and enjoy it, we have those galleries that are open that folks can enjoy artwork that's in those. We'll be adding a 4th gallery next year that's totally focused on studying pottery and a collection that a donor is gifting to us. And then we have a gallery in downtown Knoxville too. So folks don't want to come out to the mountains, we'll bring a piece of the mountains to them, and they can come to 110 South Gay and see us down there as well, right beside the Emporium. So it's a great way to lift up the great art that is being created and offer it to folks when and how they're ready to participate in it. And what we often see is folks who think they're just that appreciator, then decide to get a little bit more creative and step in maybe to a 3-hour or a half-day class, and then the next thing we know they're in 2-day classes, and then they're coming back for a week or 2-week-long workshops. So it really does kind of get in your blood and make you want to start learning and trying more.
I know Austin was curious too, especially being from this area, about the development and the transition in 2012. Talk a little bit more about, the Pi Beta Phi women had long supported Arrowmont, and they had decided to go a different direction. What was the impact on this community?
Well, I think everyone first took a big deep breath and was like, what's happening? Because I think it was well underway before anyone associated here in the local community with Arrowmont was even aware of what was happening. And in respect to the National Fraternity of Women, if you look to their mission, their mission is really focused on literacy and health care. And if you look at what Arrowmont had been really focused on since the mid to late 40s, it was arts and crafts. And so I have to believe that national board began to look at what was mission alignment with where they were investing a huge amount of money, and wanting to get their activities and financial support more in alignment with what their true mission of the organization was. I just wish they'd gone about it a little bit different way, and I think there's a lot of folks who did, because the conversations had happened, the deal had been done, if you will, before anyone in the local community really knew about it. And so it really put folks in I think an anxious position, a very uncomfortable position of feeling like, are we going to lose Arrowmont after all these years? So that was right around the 100th anniversary of the school being there, that suddenly it's not going to be there any longer. So there was much conversation about moving it. And of course, there were other communities who really wanted Arrowmont. They would have loved to have Arrowmont come and be visited in their community. But I think the right thing prevailed. There was a very committed group of businesses and local governments and just lots of individuals who said, Arrowmont started here for a reason, it's been here all these years for a reason, and we need to try to keep it here. So they put together a fundraising group, $8 million. 7 months later, they were able to purchase Arrowmont and keep it here in Gatlinburg and in Sevier County. That's really a testament, I think, to this community and what I've been privileged to see, whether I've been living here or just in East Tennessee and watching. That happens time and time again here, as people say, this is our heritage, this is our culture, and we're going to do what it takes to keep it. And certainly Arrowmont is one of those success stories. So we will always be indebted to the City of Gatlinburg, Sevier County government, and then a host of businesses and families in this community. So some of the same families who put that money down when the Pi Phis came and built the original school, some of those same families generations later were there saying, well, no, we helped build Arrowmont, now we're going to keep Arrowmont right here. So a great testament to the fortitude and the commitment that you see in this community time and time again.
And we talk about that a lot. I know you're not surprised by that.
It is funny. I mean, every episode we come across something that's similar in that, where you see similar families doing similar things generations later, maybe in different ways. I mean, just talking. I remember with Joe a couple episodes ago about him having business, or his family having businesses in downtown Greenbrier, and then my family doing the same. Now we're both in downtown Sevierville.
Yeah.
And that's just really neat to uncover those little things about the community. So.
Yeah, and just great to see this community step up time and time again. You still operate as a nonprofit?
We still do, and again, we rely so much on the community to help us. Probably 40 to 50% of our budget is fundraising. The other is persons who come from around the planet to take those workshops that we offer, and certainly we appreciate them supporting us in that way. We also have just been really fortunate through the years to have so many individuals want to establish scholarship funds with us, to endow funds so that they can make sure 2012 doesn't happen to Arrowmont again in the future, and that has been such a blessing to be a part of as well. And we give away $300,000 to $400,000 in scholarship dollars every year so that folks, again, around the planet can come and take that class or that workshop that they're really interested in.
I know you talk about 2012, worried about Arrowmont's future and survival. That happens. The community rallies behind and around Arrowmont, and then you have the wildfires in 2016, and I've seen footage. Those fires were right at the back door and even caused some damage on Arrowmont, but I'm just shocked what remains today. Yes, there was rebuilding, and yes, there was loss, but you think about the artwork, the galleries, the history that could have been.
A great story with the wildfires. So Bill May was standing there with water hoses, hosing down the Red Barn, which is the oldest historic structure along with Teacher's Cottage that we have on campus. It literally was the barn when the school started. That's where the kids took care of the livestock. Later years it was the gymnasium where they took PE, and now it's a 3-story dormitory. So it's been a little bit of everything in our history, but it's this old wooden structure, and he is literally putting water on it all day long. And finally, City of Gatlinburg Fire Department came by and said, we're pulling back. We're pulling the lines back. You got to go. You got to let it go. And so he left. I feel fully confident that he was not going to see this campus in the same way again. And so the fires did come over that hill and took both of our dormitories, took our maintenance/wood shop. There's a 6-foot 1-lane driveway between that and the Red Barn. There's an equal 6-foot driveway between that and our Turner Administration Building, where the entire permanent collection is stored. Neither of those buildings burn. You had the dye shed, which I guess is technically the oldest building. We don't use it for anything anymore. It's a small little cabin that you can turn around 3 times in, maybe. Not destroyed. So there was a reason for Arrowmont to continue. I said, despite all the adversity or just bad luck that has happened to Arrowmont through all these times, it perseveres. So resiliency and perseverance to me perseverance is one of our guiding principles. We can make it through anything. If you can make it through the Spanish influenza, not a person at Arrowmont died during that. It actually became a makeshift hospital medical care place because there wasn't anything in Gatlinburg for that. So we make it through that. We make it through the Depression. Make it through the wars when so many young people were leaving their communities and never coming back. And yet Gatlinburg, Sevier County were able to retain so much of what was important to them. Everything you go through, you look at, well, that should have taken that business out, but it didn't. And so, yes, we made it through a sale that certainly wasn't to our advantage. We made it through the wildfires, and then the pandemic. Who wants to travel around the planet and pay for a workshop so you can be on a contained 14-acre campus with 125 people that you've never met before and risk getting COVID? Yeah, there wasn't a lot of appetite for that. So we were closed for over a year. That did not lay off a person, did not lose benefits, did not reduce hours. We just pivoted to what can we do with this campus while we don't have students here. And so we went through a major overhaul. We did a lot of insulating, a lot of energy efficiency. Everything got a really good cleaning. really good painting, things that it's hard to do when you're serving the public day in and day out. So Arrowmont has a great history of coming through adversity, making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah. Let's talk about the artist in residency, and it's internationally known at this point. Do you have artists reaching out to Arrowmont saying, I would love to come and study and continue my craft?
We do. We have an application process online that we'll have 100 to 150 artists annually apply, and so they're submitting for that residency. From that, by the time it gets distilled down, we have space on campus for 5. So to go from those large numbers to the top 5 who get to spend a year living on our campus and really hopefully taking their art and craft to the next level, that's a real honor for us to get to be in that place. And then to have the support, the Wingate Foundation years ago established that endowed fund. So those artists not only have a private studio to work in, free housing, free dining when our dining hall is open, but they also are paid a stipend. And then we have a health and wellness fund too. It's a little challenging to get them under insurance since they're only with us for a year, particularly if they're coming from out of the country. So we have a health and wellness program that will help support those needs that they have while they're with us.
And you don't have to be an artist, though, to enjoy Arrowmont. I actually took a wood turning class. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. And so you offer that. I mean, anybody can come, any age?
Well, below 9 can sometimes be challenging, just keeping their attention. And then depending on what the class is, sometimes you don't want them too young around dangerous equipment. So our Art Reach program really starts with 4th grade and goes through high school. And that's really intended for every young person in Sevier County to have the opportunity to come and spend a day on campus and participate, and it's through the school system. So that's a wonderful opportunity that we love that we have here in Sevier County, and then we try to help other communities as well as much as we can, as our schedule will permit, to have them either bring their school kids to campus and spend a day with us, or we'll put everything in the van and go to them. And we do that now in 6 states. We have a national foundation that funds us as well to take arts education into rural Appalachia, much like the Popeyes did with us back a few years ago. But we focus on a lot of communities that contact us, and one of the first things that we see being cut from public school system budgets is art and music. And so if we can go find the artists that are still working in that local community and then connect them with their school, we provide all the supplies, materials, we pay those artists. And so they're there in that school working for a week. What we hope happens is after we leave and go to the next community, that we've helped to build some of those relationships between the local artist and that community and the school system, and hopefully they'll figure out a way to continue that arts education in their community. So we're in Morristown later this year. We've been in Hazard, Kentucky. We're in Stenoa, North Carolina. So the 6 states of Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee.
Wow. Did you go to Arrowmont as a student?
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking what grade was it that we went, but I certainly remember spending a day at Arrowmont when we were probably 6th, 7th, 8th grade, something like that. So.
My first time eating at the Aubrey's here, the young lady that waited on me, that seated me, as I'm prone to do, I forget to take my name tag off, and I thought, she said, "Oh, Arrowmont." I thought, how does she know I'm with Arrowmont? Well, name tag. But she told me and could tell me the exact thing she made. She was there in 4th grade, 9th grade, and 12th grade, and she remembered exactly the workshop she took and had the items still at home. And she said, that's what I want to do someday. So I want to study art, and I want to.
So lasting impression.
Lasting impression.
And influencing so many, in this community. You talk about the resiliency of Arrowmont. We like to talk about what's next. Where do you see Arrowmont 10 years, 20 years?
Well, one of the things I think that happened with the change in the land base that we have is that persons like me, if Trudy of 1966 came today, I don't know that my mom and dad would even find Arrowmont. I certainly wouldn't, because there's no shop right there on the parkway. beckoning us in and welcoming us in. So one of the things we'd really like to be is more of a resource to the local community in that more outward or public-facing way. So if you know we're offering workshops and classes, or you've got a child in the school system and you know there's outreach, then you know about that pathway to us. But if you don't already have that connectivity, it's really challenging to have it. So we would really like to have more of a public open door, if you will, so that folk, whether it's that shop or whatever other activities we can put into place, but we'd like to have that open door, welcoming folks to come anytime they want to, see what we have going on, take more of those short community classes if that's where they want to start, or just enjoy the galleries, enjoy our retail store, take some of that great art that so many artists are making home with them. So we'd like to have more of that outward public-facing area. It's going to take some logistics to make that happen, but we're really committed to trying to have that open door that the Arrowmont of years past had, as well as continuing to have those great workshops so that we have folks from 47 states annually who come and visit with us. Folks coming back internationally, that's a little bit slower than post-pandemic than what we saw before the pandemic, but we hope those folks are going to be coming back as well and enjoying not just Arrowmont, but everything this community has to offer.
Well, it's certainly a treasure. We've really enjoyed learning about it and its
thank you all
history
for
and
this
establishing, Gatlinburg and bringing a name and recognition to that area and the talents of mountain people that I think we often take for granted. And how lucky for you, that visit in 1960. Here you are today.
I have come home. It really, they talk about full circles in your life and you wonder where those are going to come from. And this was really a great opportunity a few years ago to complete that circle. So yes, it's a real joy to be there. Great people to be with. Would love you all to come visit.
We need to take a class.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
This episode was shot and edited by Link Hudson. Hollers and Hills is recorded at the Pines in downtown Sevierville. We have more stories and videos on our Hollers and Hills website. Share your Smoky Mountain memory when you log on. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.